Now, on the matter of the bank, as we know now, the Consolidated Bank Ghana has slashed, as we are told, salaries by 60%, as is being claimed by former Beige.
Salaries or allowances?
Allowances by 60%, as is being claimed by former Beige staff. The same bank is to sack 1,700 out of 3,700 staff, and UNICOF has expressed shock over the job losses. We are told that over 400 former Beige Bank staff have been fired, and the exiting staff have actually been given 2 weeks clearance notice, and among others. So the question that is coming up now is what is going on, the job losses more particularly. How do we see the future of the banking industry and the finance industry as all of these things are coming up? We are hearing of connected parties, so to speak, related and connected parties, as in companies that are retrenching. Okay, they are retrenching. Some are declaring redundancy, so to speak. How exactly do we see what is happening? Now, this is an area, I'll start with Professor Bowley.
Well, there's one thing that I always tell my students, that if anybody were to establish a company, create a job, and he invites you to come in and work, you don't go in there to work because you want to work for that person. You are working for yourself. And because of that, you would have to work in such a way that the company that you work for doesn't collapse. Because if it does, and I'll give you a very typical example. I was in Atebubu recently, and then I picked up a young man who is related to my wife whilst we were coming to Accra. And then I asked him, you finished school 2 years ago, so what have you been doing? He says, oh, I was working in somebody's pure water business. And I said, so why are you coming to Accra? He said, the business is collapsed. Then I said, who collapsed the business? Then he started giving me a long story. Then I said, well, incidentally, I found that the owner of the business has actually bought a new car and registered it to 2018 with his name. So I told him, do you see that the man whose business you collapsed has bought a new car registered 2018? Then he said, yes. I said, so it means that if you go in there and you are the one, and the business collapses, you are the loser, not the owner of the business actually. The point that I'm trying to make is that when we get, people work, and for I teach ethics, one of the things that I tell my students is that blow the whistle when you see things going wrong. Why? Because if you don't do that and the company goes down the drain, you are the first person to suffer. If a company had problems, like with the banking crisis now, definitely there are going to be casualties in terms of the staff numbers and all of that. Especially that you are consolidating the bank. If you are consolidating the bank, first and foremost, they must clear all the debt that they have. Secondly, they must get on the track of becoming stable, and that will mean that they have to cut all the waste that they can cut. And if they are cutting the waste, the first point of cutting waste, as far as Ghana is concerned, is to remove people. So I'm not sure anybody was thinking that we are going to still have all of these staff of the banks still be at post. They are going to be affected. Salaries are going to be affected, even for those that are going to remain. And for me, that is the more reason why I think that this regulatory ineptitude that led to this banking crisis is a big issue, but also that the staff and the people who these companies had been put under their care should have played their role very well. As it is, we have no way of dealing with it but to go this painful way of retrenchment, of getting people. I hear that they are going to be training people and making sure that they are resourced to set up businesses of their own and all of that. The history in Ghana doesn't tell us that this is a very good route to go. If you look at public sector retrenchment in the past, many people have died, many people lost their wives, and people's children couldn't go to school and all of that. So those are ramifications that we as individuals, when we get employment, we need to watch. And if you have to blow the whistle to make sure your company survives, you have to do that. If you are perpetuating the wrong things, you should know that if the company goes down the drain, you are the first person who is going to be dealt with. So I think that as it is now, we just have to pray that the casualties, we can minimize the casualties. But as for casualties, that people would go off, it has to happen. But if we can organize the training and all of the re-establishment well, so people can get off into industries and can make businesses for themselves. Otherwise, I don't think there's anything else to do.
Okay, so Zabochi, if we can pick it from a point of what the law will say regarding what they ought to, those who are going out should get to benefit, because that appears to be one of the biggest dilemma that they face. The UTE and Capital Bank staff who were giving to Ghana Commercial Bank still have issues and they are complaining. Some of them, they haven't received anything, they were asked to go home and they have been waiting forever. Some of them, to appear, they have higher expectations that there will be some package which should be high enough. But you would know that Section 65 of the Labour Act regulating questions of redundancy, and in this matter, if it is liquidation, you have very little to hang on. Okay. I mean, the maximum, the figure put out there is some 6,000 that you can get if the company owes you, is a 4-month salary before the liquidation, then that's what you get. The rest take care of the business itself. So what can they expect? We can start from there and then look at the broader picture of what is going on.
Okay, so starting from there, I'm just going to say that what has happened that resulted in the establishment of the construction bank?
Consolidated.
Yes. So funny enough, one of the banks that was swallowed is construction. It can be confusing. So that led to the establishment of the consolidated bank. What led to that is what under the Companies Act will be called an arrangement. In other jurisdictions, they'll call it a takeover, because another company was established that swallowed the existing company. In the context of law, as you know, when this happens, the rights and liabilities of the old company are immediately undertaken and assumed by the new company. So as the consolidated bank has had the benefit of taking over assets of the old company, they've assumed immediately their liabilities, which includes the employees and their entitlements, if, for example, you want them to go. In the context, and you rightly established it, that this has to do with retrenchment. And the Labour Act establishes a model for payment if people are leaving the company per retrenchment. I would suggest that beyond the statutory prescription, the Labour Act always encourages and actually endorses negotiations and on-the-side agreements that are arrived at, sometimes mediated and moderated over by the Labour Commission. Yes. So I think that if these employees are organized and if they come under any labor union and there is a particular collective bargaining that governs their employment, and all these can be investigated and seen, if it can be established that there's a pre-existing contractual arrangement in the form of a collective bargaining agreement, or even there's no such thing, but there's a labor union, for example, that they have, I think they can take advantage of some of these things and negotiate something on the side. Because it is standard practice in virtually all industry that handshakes and end of service benefits of particular kinds are paid out, whether you call them retrenchment packages or whatever it is. That will be paid out over and above what is recommended per statute under the Labour Act. But I'm just going to take the opportunity of also then making a comment in respect of the justifications for some of these things. Now, first of all, part of the reason why these companies may not have fared as well as they were supposed to have fared may be due to the fact that they were not efficient. And the lack of efficiency may have, in some ways, maybe put down to the sheer size of employees that they have in the payroll, and the fact that a good number of these things are actually not bringing anything into the company. I mean, the cost-benefit understanding of what a unit employee's contribution to a company is the basic and the minimum thing that management can do. And for a company that has swallowed all these companies that were otherwise not performing, the least it can do is to rationalize. And downsizing in corporate management is one of the recognized mechanisms of ensuring efficiency and to attain optimal corporate performance and optimal corporate profitability, so to speak. But in rationalizing this, of course, we cannot do that at the cost of not only employee interest, but also what the law says. But I know this has been discussed for a long time, but I have a small platform, so I'll just say my general comment particularly about and I'll just mop up on this, about this whole experience we have today, particularly in the banking field. My concern has to do not so much with the fact that the collapses, as it were, have resulted in the establishment of the consolidated bank, but the fact that we have used taxpayers' money, or we may use taxpayers' money to, as it were, bail out banks. I know there are models. The US did this. In fact, even England has done that. It's been common in Europe, and the EU has been doing that as well. But I've always had a major problem with these things as they've been done globally and now in our country, because we may unwittingly incentivize bad behavior. If the banks know that in the worst case scenario, governments will come in, bail them, and then their profits, they can quietly keep it to themselves and just walk away, whatever payments
and people won't suffer for it.
Well, there are no consequences, so to speak, moving forward. I think we will incentivize bad behavior, and this may happen, this may continue. Now, in terms of principle, there's even a difficulty further accepting this, because we privatize benefits. When the banks pay dividends, they pay to their shareholders. When executives and employees' salaries are increased, they are increased for people working in the bank. When the profits come, the workers in the bank benefit. Profits is privatized. But we socialize the losses. When the losses come, and we have all these experiences we have today leading to the collapses, our taxes are used to bail them out. I know that bonds have been floated, but if the bonds, for example, that have been floated to capitalize the consolidated bank, if the consolidated bank eventually also fails, hopefully not, but if it does fail, these bonds will be called upon, I'm sure, against the government of Ghana, which is supposed to act as a guarantee, as a guarantor in this case. So I think my worry about the whole structure is that there's a danger that moving forward in life, we may have more of these things happening because people will learn from their experiences. That you set up banks because of the contagion effects of their collapses and because of the fallouts of a bank collapse, which often is over and above. It's more than just a regular company collapsing, because there are consequences for bondholders and depositors and creditors, among others. And the ripple effect or the loss of confidence in the banking industry can actually affect overall, not only the macroeconomic indicators, but indeed the very economy. Because of these things, governments are compelled to go in. I can understand that. There's a pure rational justification for that.
And the IMF has commended what is going on.
Well, the IMF will invariably commend it, because the IMF is fundamentally concerned about the economy, the macroeconomic things, and looking at how to ensure that there is a guarantee of not only respect for contracts, but there's a guarantee for investments inflows. Don't you forget, the IMF and some of these bodies are concerned about external factors. And so they're worried about what kind of economy you have, so that if the investors are coming in, they can be guaranteed that their deposits and other operations in here are not affected by these bank collapses. So their considerations may be otherwise done for our internal worries and concerns. And I'm just saying that while I can understand that government actually may find itself in a bit of a dilemma, I suspect government, given the chance, may not have gone in. Say, look, let them deal with their own private issues, it's their problem. But I think government finds itself in the difficult corner of standing by and doing nothing and watching depositors have their deposits lost. And the loss of confidence in the banking industry leading to massive withdrawals, which may take money out of the system and may create all kinds of chaos and collateral shocks and damages. These difficulties may compel government to ensure that the liquidity challenges facing the banks are actually dealt with, just to avoid the contagion effect and the potential damaging consequences. But the toxic assets of these banks did not arrive in a day. The reality is that we know, and well, we can say we suspect, for lawyers, we don't know, but we do suspect that there is there are many cases of regulatory complicity. There are many cases also of regulatory capture. And there are many instances in which you have complicity within the banks and people actually applying for facilities and, all kinds of, if you like, deals are worked out. These things happen behind closed doors. And eventually the ripple effect is on us and we have to pay for it. If moving forward we have this clear understanding that the consequences of in-house behavior of banks affects us all, then it means that governments and the public must have an interest in what happens in the private operations of banks. Because the consequences of their behavior, they sneeze and we catch a cold. So we have to be interested in what happens there. My suggestion moving forward is that I think that we must come out with a regulation or a rule that compels banks to publish not only their balance sheet, but also to publish the list of their toxic assets every year. Every year we must know that in particular banks, these are the list of toxic assets which potentially may not be recovered. We must know, so that it also then helps us to ensure that a regulator is kept on its toes to do its work. Because I think there's a reporting responsibility between the banks and the Bank of Ghana. But it's so quiet that whether things are good or bad, we only get to know when, frankly, things have gotten to the point of irreversibility. So my suggestion is that I think there must be a certain level of public interest per publication of the level of toxic assets facing the bank. So they should not just publish their profit and loss account, which is the balance sheet. But beyond that, very bad, dangerous, toxic assets, it's okay for us to know. Maybe they can eliminate names for us for confidentiality purposes. But there must be a sense of us knowing this. Because every day you wake up, you wonder whether tomorrow's announcement is your bank.
Okay. So, Dr. Dosai, what do you have to say about, particularly the focus now is about the job losses, because it's a domino effect, what is going on now. Apart from the fact of the scare in the system, and we have heard people who say, I prefer to keep my money at home, but of course that's not a prudent thing to do. Those who are going to local banks and taking their monies away and taking them to foreign banks instead, or other local banks where they feel they are stronger, and all of that, and financial institutions that are virtually collapsing, and now the job losses, the manner in which they are coming.
It's rather unfortunate, but I expected it, because if you have these things happening, the consolidated bank will definitely do what we call asset quality analysis. And while they do the asset quality analysis, they will do what we call right sizing and reorganization. And in doing right sizing and reorganization, definitely certain people will lose their jobs. Now, in losing their jobs, you see, our laws may help us to some extent. You quoted rightly Section 65(4) to be precise. It makes the payment of the redundancy payment a subject of negotiation, even the amount, So once you leave it like that, you create problem for everybody. And what I would say is that going forward, government should not leave this to the succeeding bank and the consolidated bank. I was expecting National Labour Commission to come in to help in this regard, do proper negotiation on behalf of the workers.
But the law, is it not when they can't agree on some of these things, then you go to the Labour Commission, which will now finish it and it will become final?
But by the law, that is how it should go. But at this stage, they have weak bargaining power. At this stage, they have weak bargaining power. So at the point in time where you feel strongly that you have weak bargaining power, the workers themselves can run to the National Labour Commission or their various unions to be involved in the negotiation process so that they will have a fairer bargain. Because I can tell you that having done the asset quality analysis, the management of consolidated bank will have a fair idea of how much they think they can safely pay to get the bank floating. So these are the things that we need to consider. But my worry is the overflowing effect affecting the other banks whose activities or other businesses whose activities are linked up to the collapsed banks. They would also entail laying off workers, and then it will have a ripple effect on the economy. How do we manage this? And this is where I fought Bank of Ghana, because we saw it coming. They were receiving reports. So why is it that they are now telling us A, B, C, D? I think it is about time, and I want to join ACE, that we get heads rolling. We get people to answer questions. Once we sanction 1, 2, 3 people, we prosecute 1, 2, 3 people, it will send a deterrent signal to regulatory institutions that they will not sit down for things to happen like this. Look at the amount of money central government is using to support.
As for the prosecutions, I intimated last week, the prosecutions are going to happen. The processes have been started, and the various documentations and what you need to put in court are ongoing now, and people will have to answer questions. And there are actually some who are involved who may be doing what you may call in law what they are allowed to do to pay off and then stay back and not face prison terms.
Yeah, but I think 1 or 2 should face prison terms, because when you do that, it restores confidence into the system, and it sends a signal to investors that, look, even when the regulatory institution fails, the laws would work. So I think we should start prosecuting people. But I would advise Labour Commission and the trade union not to sit back. They should get these staff involved. They should liaise with them and then join the negotiation before it gets out of hand.
Okay. Yes, there's something. There are people who say when these job losses are coming in, let's not see them as individuals who are losing their jobs. We have literally families that are losing their livelihoods.
Yeah, something I'll talk about the job losses, but okay. I want to make a point about the the banking crisis. And for me, it's not a banking crisis.
Okay.
It's a financial system crisis because, yes, we're talking about the banks, but it involves the microfinance.
Right.
It involves insurance. It involves pensions.
That's right.
They have all been affected because of these interrelated parties model that all these banks have set up. If you look at the Unibank example, 78% of the non-performing loans were by loans that were given to shareholders. And if you look at the related parties' loans as well, they basically constitute the entire portfolio of non-performing loans. That is what is a threat to the system. And you know, we are talking about what is happening at the savings and loan levels, what is happening in terms of people's investment, the exposure to other banks in the system is very, very serious. And that is why, for me, you were mentioning, for example, that we are talking about this. We really have to keep talking about it, because if we don't use this opportunity to fix the problem, we are going to have a repeat of this problem in the near future. So when Parliament says they wanted to look at it, if they are going to do that, as we've said, it has to be in public view, but they need to find experts to support them, to look at the entire financial system. The way that these models have been put together cannot, you know, there has to be some rules against these kinds of things, because it's very, very dangerous. So I really am, as I also hear that, yes, we are going to proceed with the prosecution, because people have to be held accountable for this. But I worry, all these the Consolidated Bank and all of that, the GCB ones, if you look at the assets and the portfolio of businesses they have, how are they going to actually give our money back to us in the future? Because there's just one group of companies that are all linked together, and they are all non-performing. Actually, if you look at the IMF report, they say in the non-performing loan segment of our economy, 60% of that is uncollectible. So we are in a position where, in spite of what the Consolidated Bank you have, you might still not be able to run those banks efficiently in order to recoup your money. So there's a big question about how we are going to get our 8 billion Ghana cedis back from the setup that we've done, even though they are saying these are bridge banks. So eventually they might break up again or metamorphose into something else. So I really, for me, there's a bigger question about the financial system that we have to deal with, so that when the insurance ones start coming, because that will come very soon. On the job losses, I really, for me, I think I'm going to make an appeal, Samson. Since when you do your takes, they seem to be able to generate a certain public interest. I don't think that a lot of the people who are losing their jobs will be able to survive this. We already have a huge unemployment problem in the country. There has to be, we need to mobilize citizens privately to support the people who are going to. These are thousands of jobs, breadwinners, to come and add to the problem that we already have. We don't have an unemployment insurance system to absorb this. There is no formal mechanism for absorbing this. If we can all contribute 100 cedis, 200 cedis to create some sort of fund to support, we should, because I think it is our own interest as a society to try to cushion the effects of this.
Okay.
And I think the media should, you know, join forces together with civil society, private sector people, and be able to provide some sort of support to, I think, something little, because apart from having to go stay home every day,
Right.
and not going to work, that has its own complication on families,
Yeah.
on children going to school and all of that. So I think this is a huge problem, and we should use all kinds of mechanisms to support this. So I am putting my, whatever my contribution is, but I'm appealing to you and your platform that we can start something to support this. in terms of the money, there's no money in the system to take care of some of these liabilities. It's a huge problem. Now that we are going to go and after people's assets and so on. But, you know, when are you going to sell things? Who's going to buy them? At what price? For you to even recoup and have the liquidity to go for it.
Yeah.
We can't go and keep getting bonds to come and run these things.
Okay.
So I think there's a real challenge.
And it gets
there.
worse when we are told about the UT and Capital Bank's staff who are still, you know, waiting and hoping that something will happen to them. They have been off since when? Okay, we'll take a quick break. When we return, we'll try and finish up this matter, as I'm getting information that checks with the Labor Department this very Thursday established that the Consolidated Bank Ghana did not and has not brought its intended layoffs to the attention of the Chief Labor Officer. You know, the Labor Act, the reference we just made a while ago, requires that if there is any intention, contemplation of an introduction of what the law calls major, you know, change in production, program, organization, structure, or technology of the undertaking in such a way that it will lead to people losing their jobs. And then also, Zabochi referred to the closure and things resulting from arrangements and amalgamations. There's a process that has to be gone through. 4 months before it, is it 4 or 3 months? Before it, you are supposed to write and notify the Chief Labor Officer. Why is it that this is not happening? You notify the Chief Labor Officer, and then you also notify the particular labor union involved, and then you start the discussions in this regard. Why has that not happened, or this does not apply? We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile, your most authoritative news analysis show. Okay, so quickly, a couple of points that you wanted to make. Okay, so Dr. Odrosai, quickly, and then Professor Justice Barley as well.
For me, 2 points. The interests of depositors are very important, but then the staff of these affected organizations, you know, so I think that it's about time we look at the Depositor Protection Act. We can change the name to Stakeholders Protection Act so that it will be wider to cover the interest of such stakeholders, including the affected workers. And again, auditors' liabilities, because we have auditors or auditing firms auditing these collapsed banks since time immemorial. They were expressing independent opinion, giving them the assurance that they are doing well. What has happened? I think we should not leave them. We should try as much as possible to go deeper than that and get these auditors to face the law, because under auditing, you have auditors' professional negligence, auditors' liability. Where they are found culpable, they should also deal with them. Some of them should lose their license.
That's what happened to Anderson Coopers.
Anderson Coopers,
Anderson Coopers was the biggest auditing firm.
Yes.
Before which year? But because of the auditing of Enron and the WorldCom and a few other companies, Anderson Coopers collapsed. So maybe we may just want to find out which audit firms are
auditing them in the past years.
You know, our target is not to collapse anybody, but for the purpose of ensuring exactly that it doesn't happen for the future.
I suppose in due course we'll see the court documents, and it will be interesting to see what is in there. Yes, Professor Mabel.
Well, just to pick up from there, I think that in this country we have a major issue with regulation. And it's not just the Bank of Ghana, but you also have all of the agencies that do regulation. So it's the EPA, it is the Standards Authority, it's the authorities that are supposed to regulate behavior in this country. And I think that anytime things like this happen, we should take advantage of it and go back and see who was acting in each particular case and what did they do that facilitated this process. If public officers will be held responsible for their behavior or negligence in cases like this, we will get officers set up. Otherwise, people would go, get money and sanction things that will collapse. And like Dr. Santi is saying, now we have to make appeals from individuals. Our country is already heavily unemployed. Who are going to make those contributions to salvage banking professionals? So we need to be able to hold people responsible. And I think that maybe Samson, your take will look at regulation in this country and the
You are saying it, so
and the responsibility of actors within regulatory institutions. We need to really deal with it.
okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Asante. And talking about my take, I've already gotten a publisher who says he's going to help to do the publication for me if I'm ready to put it together, because he wants to be able to have all of them in one pack. Okay, yes. So, I mean, wrapping up.
Yeah, so wrapping up, I mean, for me, as one of the things I'd raised with you some time ago, that we need the same transparency from the Bank of Ghana. The same way we've got it. If we didn't get these reports, we would not really understand the extent to which this has gone. We need the same kind of transparency from what is happening internally at BOG.
Okay.
Who were the people responsible? Who were the people in the supervision
I think
division?
the finance minister has made an order like that,
Yes.
that they are requiring of the BOG to also get to know what is going on.
We want to know the
within them.
transaction on the other side.
Okay.
You know, so it is very, very important. The more transparency we get around this place, people say, oh, it's sensitive. People are going to have credibility about the financial system if they see that people are being held accountable. And I think that we should continue this process, because the other thing we don't do well in this country is reforms. Everybody just want to pretend and hope that the thing will go away. But we need to take this further and make sure that we plug the holes.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's hear finally from Mr. Abuchi. Yeah.
No, I think I totally agree with all that has been said. We are on a difficult crossroad, and if care is not taken, we're going to lose not only the integrity of the financial system, but the confidence. And so we need to demonstrate things that are of high visibility, but also symbolic value. And one of them, I think, is what has just been mentioned. There's a need for accountability. The auditors and the players and the actors and everyone involved who has played a role up to this point, there must be a demonstration of responsibility. Because for the future actors in a similar vein, they are waiting to see the extent to which they are incentivized or de-incentivized. And that depends on whether people are held accountable or otherwise.
Okay. Eja Kwawade says that with the issue of the banks, the best we can do as a country is that some people must go to jail. That's the only way it will help to prevent future occurrences. Well, as for jail, too many have been talking about jail. Okay, so let's see how all of that will go. Apart from you, who else is talking about the bank issue? Well, people are interested in the politics a lot and cathedrals. Okay, I think that we'll draw the curtains here, and my guests have been Professor Justice Baule. He's Professor of Public Administration, University of Ghana Business School. Dr. Kojo Pumpuni Asante is Director for Advocacy and Policy Engagement, Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD, Ghana. When he came in, I was saying, I wish we were discussing Krotini Akwemu. Just play back the lecture and look at the matters that came up as a result of that. And Professor Kwesi Prempeh had to say something on the morning show that was very intriguing about the approach we should take to fight the corruption in the country. That when you speak about it, they say, where is the evidence? We should now focus on value for money, and we'll catch the corruption right there. If the thing, there's no value for money for it, there is somebody who is seeking to profit. Dr. Eric Odrosai is a lawyer and governance expert. Well, he's told you that this very Wednesday at 5 p.m. at the British Council is going to launch this book, Fiscal Decentralization and Financial Management Practices of Subnational Governance, the evidence from Ghana. So let's be there and give him the support. Kofi Abuchi is Senior Lecturer, GIMPA Law School and Managing Partner, Axis Legal Solicitors. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini. My outfit, as always, is by Latida. Have a good afternoon.